Hey guys, welcome to the first video in my faction overview series for Homeworld Deserts of Kharak. In this series I'm going to be taking a look at each of the multiplayer factions in the game and giving a basic introduction and overview into their playstyle, unit roster, and various abilities. Basically what you can expect to see from them when you play with them or against them in the game. So we're going to jump into a game here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Coalition faction. The Coalition faction is very strong, and they're a great faction to start with if you're new to the game, or if you're learning the game. They're very stable, very strong, and quite easy to play. They're also the faction that you will use in the campaign, allowing you to be quite familiar with them.
Construction units identified.
Rally point set.
Alright, so
to location.
much like every faction
Cleared to move.
in Deserts of
Weapon
Kharak,
systems online.
your central hub of your army, the center point of your fleet,
Baserunner
is your
responding.
command carrier. Now in this game, your carrier
Salvager
functions
online.
in a similar way to your base in any other RTS. It allows you to produce salvagers, which mine the resources and drop them off at your carrier, which is how the economy works.
Salvager
It
online.
also allows you to produce units and research upgrades. So essentially in this game, your base is a
Proceed to rally
giant
point.
mobile
Secure
ship.
location marked.
And this thing is truly massive. It houses fabrication and production facilities inside the vessel, so it allows you to construct all of the units that you're going to use in your army. In addition to that, the carrier is in fact mobile, so you can move it anywhere on the map. You can have it move to another base location. You can have it, in fact, on the front lines of combat. Because the carrier, when upgraded, becomes one of the most versatile and single most powerful
Secure
combat
behavior
unit
removed.
in your entire army.
Charge layout set. Get started.
The carrier has a power shunting system. Now you'll see here there's 4 different systems. You begin the game with one power
Support
unit.
cruiser now operational.
There are upgrades that you can research to give yourself more and more power. There's 7 upgrades in total, and you can distribute that power as you see fit through the different 4 systems.
Salvager online.
This gives you the versatility
Research
to
completed.
shunt power into whatever systems are needed for the situation that you're
Rally
facing.
point set. Move to location.
You can add points into any system, and it will increase, as you can see here, that particular system. Now, if you need to, you can reset the points and shunt them into different systems. So on the Coalition carrier, we have 4 systems. Reactive armor, which increases the armor value,
Salvager online.
and therefore the survivability of the unit.
Deploying field logistics
Repair
module.
systems. Now this gives the carrier repair beams, so it can repair any unit around the carrier. Very, very good.
Salvager online.
Then we have turret network, which
Board
is
screen.
essentially
Reposition.
the power of its weapon systems. You increase this and it makes the rate of fire and the missile power increase with each
Salvager
level.
online. Proceed
Then we
to
have
rally
range
point.
systems.
Secure
This just
location
increases
marked.
the range of the weapons on the carrier. We're going to take a look now
Light
at
attack
the
vehicle
utility and
online.
support vehicles in the fleet. The first one that we're going to look at is the support cruiser.
Light
Now, the
attack
support
vehicle
cruiser
in
plays a
service.
very pivotal role in your fleet. It actually functions in a similar capacity to the carrier as a resource control
Light
point.
attack vehicle
So your
online.
salvagers can drop off your resources on your support cruiser, allowing you to essentially have multiple bases.
Light attack
Both
vehicle
support
in
cruisers
service.
have them mining
Research
one
completed.
location, while your carrier
Go for
moves
carrier.
and has salvagers mining another.
Light
The support
attack
cruiser
vehicle
also
online.
heals nearby
Weapon range
units,
systems currently
making it a
active.
great addition to your frontline battle fleet, as well as
Light
your
attack
mining
vehicle in
locations.
service. Light attack vehicle enhancements online.
Next guy we're going
Baserunner
to take a
here.
look at is arguably one of the most iconic units in Deserts of Kharak, Baserunner. This guy is a true workhorse of the Coalition fleet. It has the option to deploy 2 different varieties of turrets, an anti-air turret and an anti-ground turret, giving you some great options for area denial and defensive abilities. It also has the ability to launch a probe. Now this probe is essentially an aerial drone that you can control and use as a scouting tool. You can send it out on the map and use it to
Secure
spy on your
vehicle
opponent.
removed.
This is something that It's absolutely necessary to do in
Light attack
every game.
vehicle online. Fleet
In addition to that, the Baserunner has the ability to transport artifacts, which is a primary gameplay mode
Rally point set.
in Deserts of
Move to
Kharak
location.
multiplayer.
Research completed.
I'm not going to really go into too much detail in this video about the artifacts, but we will definitely look at that in more depth in future videos.
Defend that area with a turret. Cleared for move.
Now we're going to look at some military
Strafing
units.
for unidentified craft on approach.
The very
Mark
first
the
military
bearer.
unit that you will have
Enemy
access to
support vehicle authenticated.
is the Light Attack
Light
Vehicle,
attack vehicle
or
marked on
LAV for
approach.
short.
On our way.
Now these guys are very fast, very maneuverable.
Coordinates
However, they are not heavily armed or armored,
Trackers assigned.
so they're
Order
not very
confirmed.
good for frontline combat in most cases. However, they are very good
Support cruiser
for
now operational.
harassing the enemy, outflanking the enemy,
Coordinates confirmed.
and basically doing raids on their resource points. And they have
Strike craft
one
ready.
specialty that I will get into a bit later when I'm talking about the 3 core units, of which LAVs are definitely one of the 3 core units. Here we can see I've avoided the incoming enemy
Light
attack
attack vehicle enhancements
because I
online.
know that my
Green line
turrets,
confirmed.
which I've deployed from my Baserunner, and my carrier's weapon systems are more than enough to hold off the initial enemy assault. So I've decided to move my LAVs around to avoid the enemy army
On our way.
and perform a raid onto their salvaging operations.
Hostile production cruiser verified. Take it out. Red alert. Command
As you
carrier
can see
taking
here, the
fire.
turrets and the
turret
carrier
under
weapon
fire.
systems are more than enough to defend your base at home.
Alert. The turret post just went down.
While over here, we've got the LAVs outflanking
New heading set.
enemy army,
We require
forming a raid
additional
on
logistics
one of their
modules.
resource
Deploy one from the
locations.
command carrier. 6 modules.
One thing of note, if you're a new
Proceed to
player
rally
or if you're
point.
learning this
Secure
game,
location marked.
if you press spacebar, okay, you enter the Sensors Manager. The Sensors Manager is kind of
Armored
like
assault
a
operational.
mini-map in another RTS. It
Charge
gives you a
weapons,
great
let's move.
overview of the map. You can control the camera in the
Green line
Sensors
confirmed.
Manager in the same ways that you do in-game.
Armored assault
the right mouse
modifications
button.
carried out.
And this is essential when you're playing the
Enemy
game.
salvager neutralized.
Gives you a large overview of the map and allows you can in fact even issue orders to your units. So it allows you to make large scale
Order confirmed.
kind of macro movements, if you
Hostile
will.
armor incoming. Be advised. Enemy support vehicle authenticated.
In addition to that, you might have noticed that each different unit type, you select
Armor
them,
ready. Coordinates
or when
confirmed.
you view them in the Sensors Manager, is represented by a different shape.
On our way.
This essentially represents that unit class. So we have light units that are represented by a triangle, and armored units that are
Salvager
represented by a
online.
square.
We've detected
This also
something.
gives you a very
Can you
great
confirm
overview
visual?
and allows you to
Attack
quickly
vehicle is
understand
under
what's
fire.
going on in the battlefield and issue orders to the relevant units.
Move it. Green line confirmed.
So this brings us to
Salvager
our second
online.
military
On
unit,
the move.
which is
Placehold
the
charge.
Armored Assault Vehicle, or AAV for short. Now these guys are everything that the LAV are
Secure
not.
as removed.
They're slow, heavily armored, and heavily armed.
PDA active.
Definitely a frontline
point
combat
set.
unit
Move to
in
location.
every possible way.
Fleet capacity
They have a unique
deployable
ability,
out.
which is to deploy smoke.
Research completed.
Essentially, it's a
Hostile
targeted
light attack
ability,
Vehicle detected.
and you can deploy smoke anywhere on the battlefield to block line of sight, which allows them to advance on armor-piercing fire and get close where they can deploy their giant Gatling guns.
Armor, go ahead.
So these AAVs are essentially a hard counter
Coordinates confirmed.
to lightly armored and lightly
Research
armed
completed.
light vehicles.
Baserunner is en route.
They will take virtually
We
no
need a
damage
turret
from
set in
them,
place.
and in turn, they will totally destroy them. They also have the unique
Be
ability on their
advised, carrier
weapons
repair systems
that their
online.
fire
Armor systems
and their
active.
target slows
Time to clear out.
targeted
Be ready
units,
to engage.
allowing them
Proceed
to
to rally
slow
point.
the
Secure
approaching enemy
location
down
marked.
or
Armored
prevent an
vehicle is
enemy from
taking fire.
escaping. As you can see here, these sand skimmers are just no match for the armored assault vehicles. You want your armored assault vehicles leading charge in many situations. You want them on the front lines of combat, and you want them protecting your valuable and weaker units, such as your salvagers if you're under attack,
Ready to engage.
or your light attack vehicles in a combat situation.
Railgun operational.
So,
Support cruiser.
If armored assault vehicles
Eyes open out there.
are so good against light vehicles,
Unknown inbound.
then what can you use against armored
Be
vehicles?
advised. Enemy support vehicle.
That's where these bad boys come into play.
Contact. Enemy armor.
These are
Very
railguns,
designated.
your third
Coordinates confirmed.
basic combat unit that you'll have access to. They're essentially extremely long range,
Rally point
extremely
set.
high
Move to
damage,
location.
single shot armor piercing rounds. Now these things, when upgraded, can shoot almost halfway across the map,
On our way.
and they will absolutely wreck any armored target they fire upon.
Confirm visual.
See here, the enemy is bringing out some armored ships of its own, Galcian assault ships, which are more powerful than the Coalition variant.
Enemy support craft
They're
neutralized.
attempting to engage in a direct confrontation.
Move order.
Want your railguns far back from your lines, though.
Enemy
They're
production
fairly
set.
slow
Upper
and
engage,
very
destroy.
weak in regards to hit points and
New
armor.
heading set. Armor vehicle.
Can't have them on the front line. You need them protected by armored vehicles. As you can see here, I'm providing a screen with my AAVs, while the railguns sit back and absolutely punish these armored vehicles. There you see the smoke
Hostile armor eliminated. On our way.
deployed to help protect my armored assault vehicles from the superior firepower of the assault ships. I'm moving my railguns back
Coordinates
and
confirmed.
moving my armored assault vehicles back in order to
Proceed
lure
to rally point.
these assault
Secure
ships
location marked.
into a situation where there's far too much firepower for them to deal with. So now that we've discussed these three units, I think it's worth mentioning
Underway.
the core gameplay dynamic between these
Green
three
line
units.
confirmed. Go
Your
ahead.
railguns,
Armored
your
assault
armored
online.
vehicles,
Armored assault
and your
modifications
light
carried
attack
out.
vehicles.
Strike fighter ready for service.
These three units will provide essentially the core of your army in every game.
Move
Every
order
faction
confirmed.
has a unit that is very similar and
Get
plays a
moving.
similar role. And these three units have essentially a rock, paper, scissors
Gunship is
kind
now
of
in
dynamic to
circulation.
them. The armored assault vehicles are heavily armored, very defensive, and will counter your light vehicles. Your railguns,
Fleet
which are
logistics
high-powered
module out.
anti-armor shots, will counter your armored vehicles. But because the
Go for
railguns
range
are
combat
slow
relay.
and have
Hostile
little armor and hit
production
points,
eliminated.
light attack vehicles, which are faster, can
Enemy
actually
salvage
hard
destroyed.
counter
Coordinates
pretty much
confirmed.
your railguns. So the LAVs counter rails,
Green
rails
light.
counter
Strike fighter
AAVs,
online.
AAVs
Strike
counter
fighter ready for
LAVs.
service.
Move
Once you
order
get
confirmed.
used to this gameplay dynamic,
Destination set. Divert
it
power.
actually is pretty simple and straightforward and allows for a lot of variation in your games. In Deserts of Kharak, it's essential to make use of terrain to your advantage
We're moving out.
and to
Spool up.
effectively use these three core unit types with one
Deploy
another
turret
and
on
coordinate your
location.
efforts. These dunes here, as you can see, actually
Alert.
block line of
Hostile
sight.
battlecruiser inbound.
Terrain's very
Be
dynamic.
advised. Hostile
If I'm on
carrier
one side of
detected.
this dune and the enemy is on the other side, we actually can't fire on each other. You might be able to see them, but your weapons can't fire through the dunes. In addition to that, dunes also provide a height advantage. Pardon me. Any terrain actually will
way.
provide a height advantage. When you are on top of a hill like this, firing down, you will have a damage and accuracy bonus added to you. So you'll notice that a lot of the fights in Deserts of Kharak will revolve around securing crucial
Punch it.
terrain
We gotta go.
features on the map.
Coordinates confirmed. Hostile on sensors. Authentication.
Now we're going to see an example fairly soon here
Research
of
completed.
combat
Green line
between
confirmed.
both forces, the enemy forces and my forces, and each of us are going
Assault
to be
cruisers now
deploying
available for production.
the three core unit types. And we're going to see how those unit types interact. And you'll have an
Rally
example of
point
this
set.
rock, paper,
Move to
scissors
location.
mechanic that I was talking about, and how to best utilize that to your advantage.
Green line confirmed.
At this point, after this battle that we're going to watch, I'm going to transition into talking about the higher end units
Coordinates confirmed.
and how they can add to the
On our
dynamics of
hostile
combat in the
designated
game.
part bearer.
We also have aircraft and cruiser class vessels. You can see I'm currently researching some of those,
Coordinates
and I'll be
confirmed.
building them, and we'll talk about those as we see a little example of combat here where the enemy has railguns far to the back. I've got my railguns. I've got my armored
Units
assault
underway.
vehicles protecting my railguns from any skirmishers that might want to attack them.
Enemy armor.
And I have my
on approach.
LAVs positioned to outflank and destroy his railguns once combat begins. I've got my probe here, which is granting me a little bit of extra
Assault
vision.
cruiser ready
So
for
my
assignment.
railguns, which actually can fire much farther than they can see, are going to have an advantage in this situation as well. So we see the enemy is beginning to move up its front line,
our way.
which is the armored vehicles,
Hammer it, get us over there.
right into railgun fire, which is not what you want to be doing. Now that the armored assault vehicles are out of the way, my LAVs charging for a flanking maneuver on the rails.
New coordinates
And although
verified.
this is a very, very
Enemy armor
basic
spotted away.
example, this is kind of what you want to be doing with your units in a
Enemy
game.
railgun eliminated.
Well, here I've got an
Strike craft
assault
making
cruiser,
effective fire.
which is the first kind of cruiser
Heading set.
class available to you. It's essentially a fast, maneuverable, anti-light
Hostile railgun.
cruiser class
Opened up.
vehicle.
Get this cruiser into
There we
the
have
fray.
the LAVs just cleaning up the remainder of the railguns. And that combat went pretty well in my favor.
Aerial strike craft now available for production.
Enemy
Now,
contacts on the
we're
board.
going to talk about
New coordinates
aircraft.
verified. Move order
Aircraft in
confirmed.
this game does not function like other RTS games. Your aircraft are not simply floating units.
Enemy
They're
production
units that you
cruisers
build,
appeared in the AO.
which stay docked on the carrier, and you launch them to perform aerial strikes on the enemy.
Alert.
See,
Enemy
I've targeted the
cruiser
aerial
detected.
strikes, and I've sent each of my different aerial unit types onto the appropriate targets. They will fly around until they've expended their ammunition. They will return back to the carrier and dock with the carrier again to refuel, refit their various ammunition types.
Set new arrow to ready.
As a coalition, you'll have access to 3 different types of aerial units. There's strike fighters, which you saw attacking the Gelson
Research
carrier.
completed. Bomber ready
They
for
are
launch.
exactly what their name implies, strike fighters. They're made for surgical strikes against high priority enemy targets. They'll fly in, deliver their missile payload, head out of there, and they're essential to any coalition fleet. They're very fast, and they allow you to take out certain targets with impunity and get out of there before those targets can cause damage to your more vulnerable ground forces. The second unit that you saw with the heavy caliber machine gun firing on the salvagers was the Gunship.
Just when we were getting
The
comfortable.
Gunship isn't quite as fast as the strike ships, and it's made more for a ranged support
Strike fighter
role.
online.
Use it to support your frontline vehicles to soften up the enemy with area of effect machine gun fire, or you can use it to perform strikes against enemy resourcing operations.
Bomber online. Ready for launch.
Third, you're going to see the third variety of aircraft is the tactical bomber. Now this thing
Alert. Hostile battle cruiser inbound.
is kind of a tier 3 air unit,
39 confirmed.
and it's for delivering explosive payloads
Research
to groups of
completed.
enemy
Tracking
units.
armored craft on approach. Hostile production cruiser verified. Take it out.
As you can see there,
Copy.
very
Search
effective
carrier.
at grouped up ground units.
Coordinates confirmed.
Now, air in this game is very volatile. It's extremely strong. However, anti-air weapons in this game are also extremely strong. So you have to be very careful with how you're maneuvering and where you're ordering your
Proceed to
airstrikes.
rally point. Secure
Again,
location
scouting is
marked.
always crucial in this regard.
New heading set. Reading. Green
The
line
examples you're
confirmed.
seeing are very basic, but I just kind of wanted this video to be an introduction to the faction and a basic overview so that you could understand
Move order
the
confirmed.
subsequent multiplayer games that I'll be posting if you're a new player or
New
perhaps you don't
coordinates
own the game.
verified. Coordinates
Now let's talk about the carrier again.
on our way.
I was mentioning the power shunting system, and as you can see here, I've been less than vigilant
Armor is
on
en route.
assigning my power points to the various power systems on the carrier, and I'm accumulating quite a bit. This is not something you want to do. You want to
Artillery
definitely
cruiser
assign
operational.
those
Light
to
attack
the
vehicle is
appropriate
under
points. So here's the second
Alert. Light
cruiser
attack
class
vehicle destroyed.
vessel,
Let's wipe them out to that.
the artillery
Be
cruiser.
advised. Hostile carrier visually
This thing
authenticated. Get
is
hostile detected.
anti-everything.
Visual unconfirmed.
As you can see, it does not need line
Enemy
of sight to
salvage
fire.
destroyed.
and it can fire an artillery blast that is a targeted AoE ability. So it requires good micro and good map awareness to use effectively. However, it can strike at very long range and in a very wide area. Anything that it hits is in big trouble. Use this guy to support your front lines against large blobs of railguns, or to assault, as I was doing there, enemy resourcing operations. And with the added bonus that you can fire over terrain, it allows you to basically, if you position correctly and wisely, allows you to attack without fear of being counterattacked.
Tracking target. The railgun.
These units are crucial.
Armored vehicle is taking fire.
Oh boy, I'm gonna miss this. I don't want to miss that.
Alert. Railgun lost.
I'll describe that in a second.
Underway.
You want these guys anytime you're facing a large group of enemy units. Back to the carrier for a second here. Carrier, what you just saw there was its cruise missile. It took me a little bit longer than expected to describe Air Forces and the artillery cruiser, so I kind of missed when I was supposed to talk about it, but you'll see it again. Once you reach power level 5 on your carrier, and this is the same for every carrier with every faction, you have access to that carrier's super weapon. You can have access to it no matter where you put your power. So if you want your carrier as a frontline repair unit to repair all your forces, or if you want it to be a combat monster with full power in weapons and weapon range, it doesn't matter. 5 levels of power, pardon me, and you will have the cruise missile. The cruise missile is ridiculous. You can target anywhere on the map, anywhere, and it will instantly cause an insane amount of damage to anywhere that it hits. And by instantly, I mean instantly when it hits. It's front-loaded damage. It takes quite a while to get to target, but if you have the power, you have the money, you can't go wrong with the cruise missile.
Rally point set. Move to location.
Now we're getting pretty close to the final battle of this video, and we're about to see the ultimate unit in the Coalition arsenal, battle cruiser. Now this thing is scarier than it sounds. You can see it next to the carrier here.
Battle cruiser operational.
On the board.
This thing is the epitome of a frontline combat monster. Massive hit points, massive armor, and ridiculous damage. This thing is your spearhead. And there is virtually nothing in the game, no battle line or no formation that a battle cruiser cannot crack. Advance a couple of these alongside a carrier, and whatever you're looking at is in for a very, very bad time. So we're going to see the final battle here, where I'm going to use the battle cruisers to spearhead my assault on the enemy carrier, supported by my carrier, support cruiser healing up my damaged, battle-weary forces, with support from an artillery cruiser behind the hill. So as you can see here, battle cruisers make very short work of any unit, and they can take more than a few shots on the chin and just keep dishing it out. The weakness of battle cruisers is they're very slow, and so it can be difficult to get them into position to use effectively. See the cruise missile firing.
Enemy armor disabled. Unload on them.
All the units back there that were supporting the front battle line of our enemy are now gone. Battle cruisers laying into the enemy carrier.
Move order confirmed. All stations accounted for, Captain.
Now the rest of my forces are moving up, pushing for the kill. So, I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope you found it interesting. I will be doing the rest of the factions, starting with Galcia next. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please feel free to leave them below. If you liked the video, hit it with a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, hit it with a thumbs down. I will see you guys shortly for the Galcian introduction video.
Hold position and await further orders.